Do not let society, do not let cultural expectations, do not let the systems that you work in tell you otherwise, that you don't belong, because you do. And the biggest thing here is that we as women of color, we need to have a seat at the table. We need to start changing the narrative. And we already are, but we need to continue, because by us being there, we're going to show the future generations that are coming behind us that they can do it too.
Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Ambitious Women of Color podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Lynn Rojas, and this is a podcast for ambitious women of color who want career without sacrificing your life. Today, we're talking about what happens after you get the promotion. What does it actually look like to lead as a woman of color at the director level? My guest today is Elvy Garcia. She's a certified life and leadership coach who serves as a senior leadership by day and runs her own coaching practice by heart. She helps women of color rise in their career without losing themselves in the process. Talk about the identity shifts from managing work to managing people, navigating being the only woman of color in the room, setting boundaries without guilt, and the practical tools you need to lead with confidence. If you're already aiming for leadership, just stepped into it, or already there navigating the challenges, this one's for you. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. I am here with Elvy, and I'm really excited to have her here. And Elvy, you are my first guest on the podcast, so thank you so much for going through this journey with me.
Oh my God. Well, first of all, I'm so honored. And I have to say, I'm really proud of you. I know when you reached out and said that you were starting your podcast, I was like so excited, because this is what women of color need. We need more community. We need more podcasts out there that talk to our own experiences in order to advance in our careers and just in life in general. Super excited, but more honored that I'm just one of your first ones. So let's
Yay!
make some
So
magic happen.
excited. Yes, let's do it. All right. So, starting off with the signature question for the podcast, what is one thing you refuse to sacrifice for your career?
Ooh, okay. That is a hard question, but I would say, in all honesty, one of the things I refuse to sacrifice is my emotional, mental, and physical well-being, and also the time and energy I spend with the people that I love. And I realize that throughout my journey, a lot of my leadership capacity is tied to how well I feel. And so if I am overworking, overpouring, and not attending to my needs, I don't lead from a place of creativity or a place of, confidence, right? And so I'm really intentional on how I, make sure that I set boundaries around, those areas for myself.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I know we'll probably dive deeper into it, but I just love, that you started with that, because I feel that as women of color, especially Latinas, like we're not modeled to protect our energy. We were not modeled to rest and recover. And that wasn't something that we grew up seeing. So knowing that for you, you realize this is a non-negotiable for me. I need to protect my energy and my peace so you can show up as your best self for everyone, but also for yourself. Like you can't be there for everyone. You can't be a great leader if you're not taking care of yourself first. So I love that so much. So let's have, everyone get to know you. Love to hear about your journey. Like, how did you get into director level? Because that is where you're here today, to talk about like what it is for a woman of color, especially Latina, getting into these spaces, getting into director level roles where you don't see that many people that look like us in those position. So we love to hear, how did you get into director level and what surprised you the most stepping into that role?
Yeah, so it's funny because when you start off with your career, right, your career ambitions and your goals, you don't start thinking like, one day I want to become like a director or an executive director or CEO, at least not for me. I started off with, I just wanted to make an impact in my community and make an impact in the world, as cliche as that sounds. But I really started wanting to be a teacher, and it progressed to being a counselor. And then I just settled, as the more work I did in the nonprofit field, I said, you know what, I really see myself as one day leading a nonprofit. And so in order to get to that director level, I really had to have a candid conversation with myself and other people that I really looked up to that were in that position already, and ask them, what is it that I need to focus on? What are the skill sets that I need to develop in order to get there? And it was really surprising, because a lot of the skill set that we focus on It's
Mhm.
learned through experience and it's learned
Mhm.
through time. But one of the things I realized is that we really need to focus on who we are. It's the inner work and also public speaking. So it's like practicing speaking your truth. Because if you aren't able to connect with people, if you aren't able to communicate effectively, then there's no way that you're able to lead at that director level and to have people move with you to accomplish the goals and the mission of an organization. And so, and the other skill sets just come with it. And so
Yeah.
it's almost like saying, just go for it, right? Do what you got to do in order to get there, but mainly focus on practicing speaking your truth, public speaking, put yourself in uncomfortable situations where you have to speak publicly because the more that you do it, the more comfortable you're going to be.
Yeah, and what were some ways that you like started developing your voice, not just public speaking, because yeah, like that is a great way for you to get comfortable with that. But what were like maybe some micro situations, or if you took specific courses, classes, like how did you really get yourself to develop that skill set?
So I went head in first. I didn't take any like little micro steps. I just said, that's what I need to do. And that's, an identity I need to take on, which is like, I'm a public speaker. And because I took a head dive in first, I was like, I started at my job. I said, you know what? I'm
Hmm.
going to want to start presenting, speaking up more in meetings. And it was so terrible at first. I had a mentor that, told me, was just watching me do presentations at work and then said, hey, you sound really robotic, like very, very scripted. And I said, instead of getting offended, I was like, great. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know because then I knew
Yeah.
like I needed to switch up, my approach. And it was such a trial and error. And to be honest, one of the things that really helped me the most was watching TED Talks.
Hmm.
And there are some really great speakers on TED Talks. And so I would just watch their tone, their mannerisms, how they pause, what they would say, and how they said it. I would also look at people that really resonated with me. A couple people that I love hearing is I love hearing Oprah. She's such an amazing public speaker. Michelle Obama. And then even like Brene Brown, like I really love how they express themselves, how they connect with people. And so I just started watching and analyzing and studying how other great public speakers were doing it. And so
Hmm.
I would take tidbits here and there and then try to incorporate it, throughout my trajectory in my career.
No, I love that because it's like something as simple as that, like really immersing yourself and like learning from others. It is like really a skill set of how they
Yeah.
are able to like story tell. They're able to like really captivate the audience and like get you to care about what's going on, but also
Yeah.
like bringing things that is more digestible for everyone to like be able to like understand and implement and try that for themselves. And while you were, climbing the ladder and getting to the director role, were there any times that you realized, "Oh my god, this is so much different than what I expected," like, the idea you had of, like, what a leader should be or leadership in your mind versus, like, what you actually, actually experienced?
Yeah, that's such a loaded question. Let
You
me
could
take a
think, like, small.
let me
Yeah,
take
yeah.
let me take a pause. So I think, well, I know, my perspective of becoming a director. I just felt like as you progressed, the feeling of confidence, the feeling of security of yourself, of your role, of your connection with people would get easier, but it doesn't. I feel like it gets harder because the higher you go, the more vulnerable and visible you have to be, the more vocal you have to be. And so when that happens, the spotlight shines on you. And then
Mhm,
all of a sudden you have all of these insecurities, these doubts that are just amplified because you're being faced with challenges that you've never faced before. And so I thought, that being part of my journey has been quite interesting. And then in addition to not only that, but it's also being able to develop the people skills, right? To be
mhm.
able to work with people. And one thing they don't teach us is that they give us and they train us with a manual on how to get things done, on how to
Mhm.
manage projects. But what they don't teach you is really how to lead people, but not just the people, but the people that bring all of their baggage with them. And by baggage, I mean like their triggers, right? Their
Mhm.
life
Mhm.
experiences, their perspectives and how they view the world. And you need to really learn how to manage that. And the only way that you can do that is by learning how to self manage and become aware of your own triggers and your own emotions, right? And be able to create space for, to process things as well. I think that has been the biggest surprise for me so far.
Yeah, I want to dive a little deeper into what you just said right now because I know that, so many think, oh, in order for me to be a leader, I need to show up a certain way, or I need to show them that I can do the job. I need to show them that I can manage people. But then the managing yourself and your triggers and like your energy and everything. Can you talk a little bit more about what that looks like?
Yeah. So I always tell anybody that I coach is people are mirrors and they are going to reflect three versions of you. They're going to reflect the version that you were, the version that you are, and then the version that you will become. And
Hmm.
so as you interact with people, you're going to feel certain triggers. You're going to feel a certain way. And so as those things happen, I always encourage, my clients that lean into those feelings so you can
Hmm.
become self-aware of what it's trying to tell you. And so if someone, for instance, I've coached someone, and including myself, where if you have a supervisor or a boss that says something that triggers you, right? And it's like, well, they said this and it makes me feel like I'm not seen, right? So
Hmm.
that's a trigger that you need to work on. It's like, okay, where in my life, at what point did I feel that I wasn't seen or heard or valued, right? Now, how do I move past that? And how do I hold space for myself because it's okay? And how do I hold space for other people as I'm leading and climbing up the ladder? And so it's like looking at yourself through other people's lenses and figuring out, okay, what is it that I need to process? What emotions do I need to heal? What part of me is speaking out loudly that I haven't paid attention to?
Yeah, I love that because, not many times you're thinking that it has to do with like the inner working, your inner child, the way that you grew up, or those unhealed wounds that you have. I actually, that's also my same approach as well. Like trying to understand, what is it trying to teach me? What do I need to
Yeah.
heal? Or what is this trying to tell me? So I love that you also like use that to help you become a better leader. And now let's talk about the shift from going from managing projects, like, before you get into the level where you're managing people, maybe you're managing a program or you're managing projects, and you
Mhm.
have the expertise of that type of leadership of managing, like maybe a department, but not maybe managing people, right? What do you think was the biggest identity shift for you that now you're managing people and you're responsible for like the things that they do, the metrics that they hit, and then also, serving as a counselor, like wearing so many hats as a leader
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah. So you have to start by, and I call this the employee mindset, where a lot of us, as we move into these higher positions, we keep the employee mindset, the employee identity, and it's hard for us to part ways. And here's why: because as an employee, right, you're so task oriented.
Mhm.
You get it done, yet you get rewarded for it, right? And you feel accomplished. But as you move forward, into a director position, you're no longer doing the work on your own. Now you have to empower the people in your team to help you do the work, right? So it's no longer just about you. It's about us. It's about everyone else, right? And that's the hardest part because as women of color, we've tied our worth to how much we do. And so if we're not constantly doing it on our own, if we're not constantly working at something, we feel like we're not being productive. We feel like we're not succeeding, but it's quite the
Mhm.
opposite. And the analogy that I give everybody is that the perfect analogy is sports, right? You've become the coach of a big sports team, right? If it's basketball, if it's football, if it's baseball. Tell me when you've seen a coach get on the court, get on the field to do the job of the players. You don't, right? they stay on the sidelines. And just because you're on the sideline doesn't mean you're not important. You're more than important. And what's happening is that you're empowering your team towards the direction of whatever project, whatever mission and vision that the organization has. And so it's having that shift in that conversation with you, right? But the biggest thing here, especially as women of color, is redefining what success means at this level, because it's no longer about you doing the work on your own.
No, I love that. I love the analogy of like, yeah, they literally do not go into the field and kick the ball or whatever.
Yeah, that
Yeah. And and now like how does being a woman of color add another layer to it? Because I know you just mentioned it, but I want to dive a little bit into that because we're not only navigating the leadership piece, but we're also navigating being maybe one of the few or the only woman of color in that space. So
Mhm.
what is that added layer and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, so I think like the added layer really is that we all think, like I mentioned at the beginning, that we all think that once we get to a certain level, that all of these fears, these doubts, and are just going to magically disappear, and that we're going to become confident and different people, right? But I've noticed, and including like I was recently coaching a client that who had just gotten a higher role within the organization, a director level role. And the first thing that she told me is that now I feel like I have to work 10 times harder, that I have to prove that I'm worthy of having this position, right? And that's the added layer and the extra work that we need to work through. And then in addition, it's also like this imposter syndrome almost, right? But
Hmm.
being able to reframe it. And so traditionally, imposter syndrome means like we feel like we're frauds, that we are someone that we're not. But in reality, imposter syndrome is being in an environment, working within a system that doesn't reflect who we are as people. And so we feel like we don't belong. And so all of those layers, right, make it a lot more, I don't want to say complicated, but it's the only word that's coming up for me right now, like complicated, um, in order to feel that we are worthy to be in those positions. And so we have to be extra intentional and aware that this is going to happen. Like the
Hmm.
higher you go, the more you're in the spotlight, all of this is going to come up, and you have to be prepared on how you're going to process it, right? So it doesn't weigh you down.
Yeah. When you are in this space where there's not many people that look like you, or you may be the only one, it makes you go on that overdrive of proving. And I
Yeah.
personally experienced that. My first consulting job, I was working with Harvard doctors and I was the only Latina in the room. I mean, I was young
Wow.
too. So, so it really put me.
You're still
Oh, thank you, thank you. But it really put me in that position where like felt like I constantly had it to prove myself. And I mean that led to burning out and everything. But it
yeah.
just like, what I learned from that is that like I don't need to be proving myself to show that I belong, that it's like I had that shift where I focused on myself and
Mhm.
instead it's like how can I, leverage my skill set and leverage me, yes, me being Latina and be able to understand and my like gift of being able to see like the bird's eye view and from different
Yeah.
perspective and bring like a different lens to that group. And that really is what helped me like overcome that need to prove and know that I was already worthy enough. So I love that you brought that, and it's just such an important topic and such an important lesson for women of color, especially the more that you rise in leadership. And for you specifically, how has showing up authentically as a Latina in these spaces, like how has that process been for you without you feeling like you need to be code switching yourself?
Yeah. So I have to be honest. I know part of my leadership, thought leadership is, to be authentic, to show up authentic and speak your
Hmm.
truth. But sometimes I find myself where I need to code switch. And I'm giving myself like the grace of saying, okay, you're code switching because you don't feel safe in this space, but it doesn't mean that I'm becoming someone different. Right. And so I just want to
Hmm.
make that very, very, very clear that if the environment is set up for you to be come in with your full whole self, be authentic, right? It feels safe. You'll see my humor, you'll see me, the way that I approach things, the way that I talk, right? It's completely different than being in a space where I'm just like, yes, I am not going to be able to bring my full self.
Hmm.
So I'm going to code switch a little bit just so I feel safe enough, right? But then at the same time, add my little flavor to the situation. And so for anybody that thinks like, to be my authentic self, I cannot code switch. I want you to genuinely understand that there are circumstances when you are going to have to code switch because they're not safe for you. And if they're not safe for you, you can't be yourself. Right.
Giving permission to that, like, and giving yourself grace for that, because you're right. Like, there are situations where unfortunately you have to, but like, how can you still continue to know, like, this is just like a part of me? It's like a persona, but it
Hmm.
doesn't mean that that is you. And it doesn't mean that that's you not being authentic. It just means that maybe, like you said, if you don't feel safe, it's a way to protect yourself. So give yourself permission to do that and give yourself grace, because if that is the only way that you can navigate that situation, your safety is the most important thing.
Absolutely. 100%.
So let's talk about the things that you face as a director, and, the things maybe that people don't talk about. What is it like, the difference of, like, for you that it's been in this role, or since you became a director, like, what have you seen be the biggest challenges that you've navigated?
So it comes with a lot of responsibility, I would say. And I think that's like the biggest challenge because now you're not, only focused on yourself, you're focused on depending on the size of your organization and the size of your team, but you're in charge of a group of people and you're in
Mhm.
charge of a mission and vision and to uphold that. And so it's a lot of responsibility that I feel like we don't talk about. But I'm going to say though, as women of color, that's probably why we're going to thrive in these director positions because we were raised to be the responsible ones. We were raised to ensure that everybody else was taken care of. But some of the biggest challenges I would say is like taking ownership and accountability, even if it's not your fault, because that is, that you're leading a team of people and as a leader, you're supposed to protect your team. You're supposed to lead from the back. There is this analogy that someone gave me that a herd of a group of wolves, right? The alpha leaves from behind. They don't leave from the front. And so I've always taken that into consideration. Like, just because you're on the front doesn't mean that you're the one leading. You have to take a step back and steer the team from behind, right? And that can be challenging sometimes because you're just like, you just want to get in there. You just want to make sure that you're front and center sometimes. And so taking all of that into account.
I love that you touched on that, the analogy of the pack of wolves, because there is also the identity of the eldest daughter. And the eldest
Yes.
daughter usually is the one in the front because she knows that she can take all the hits and everything. And that's how she thinks she needs to lead. So I love that you really brought that into perspective, because a lot of us could be eldest daughters or first gen, and we have only known to operate on survival mode and not having to prove ourselves. So it's like really refreshing to hear you like not embodying that and really seeing your role as a leader to be like seeing the whole situation and protecting your
Yeah.
team and being there for your team.
Yeah. And so like you said something right now that I don't think I mentioned, that how you identify is so important as well. And one of the things with my thought leadership and how I coach, other women of color is that you have to understand like what got us this far is not going to get us to the next level. And
Hmm.
you just mentioned it, right? We're the hardest workers in the room. We supersede all expectations. We ensure that everybody else is taken care of, right? All of those things, right? We, go to school, we get the degrees, we get the certifications in order to ensure that we have an opportunity to land these positions. But once we actually are in a director position, this is not going to get us to that next level. And so we have to be able to part ways with that identity in order to actually lead from behind. And that's the hardest part, to be honest, is because we've grown up to be a certain way, right? We identify with being, at least for me, the eldest daughter of immigrant parents and being first generation, that I always had to be the hardest worker in the room. I wanted to honor my parents, my family. I went to school. I got my bachelor's. I got my master's. I continued, my education by getting other certifications to ensure that I was ready for, a higher position. But all of that didn't matter once I was in a director position because I needed to learn how to lead from a different perspective. I needed to learn how to actually connect with people and be so confident with myself that I was able to actually articulate and communicate, the impact of an organization and how to get people to actually buy into it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I work with my clients. Is like even getting to the director position, if you don't like let go of that identity of that need to overwork and overprove, and exactly
Yeah.
what you said, like what got us here is not what's going to get you to the next level.
Mm-mm.
So it's so important to like realize that that hustle that like you're so proud of, and you're like, oh, but I work so hard and I got all the degrees and I'm doing the thing, and now I'm doing 2 jobs so that I can get to the director level role. Like, it's not going to happen, and if you get there, you're gonna crash and you're not going to succeed because, like you said, that those same skill sets are
Yeah.
not what's needed. Like, now you're a leader, now you, are like a mini CEO, you have this, like, whole department or team that you need to, like, make sure that invested in their growth and supporting them, but then also you are responding, know, to the people above you. So that's like a delicate balance there. So for you, how has it been like now managing people and being responsible for them?
Yeah. So I think I have a grasp on it now, but when I first started, was very hard because sometimes you think like, why would someone do that, and why would someone say that? Why wouldn't they just do it, this way? And so it's been a lot of trial and error, and just really understanding that people are going to be people,
Hmm.
and you can't control them, and all you can do is meet them where they are and offer some guidance and some tools. But I will say though, one of the biggest skill set and advice that I would give anybody is that let people do what they do best and then just step back. Right. And your job as a director is to be able to assess your team's strengths and put them in positions where they're going to thrive. And it's easier said than done because, sometimes you walk into a team that's a really established, right? And you're getting to know your team and you're getting to know like which direction are we heading. And so in those moments, like if you find moments like, wow, you're really good at public speaking, or you're really good at, putting together frameworks, right? Put them in positions where they're going to thrive. And that really is what your job is all about, is moving the pieces. In order for you to be successful, they need to be successful.
I love that. Yeah. And then, one of the things that I hear a lot from my clients is that they struggle with setting boundaries while,
Mm,
being leaders, setting boundaries with their team because they feel guilty, like, I don't want to be unsupportive or not a team player.
right.
How do you think, like, what is like the best approach of setting boundaries as a leader? Because I know for you, you said one of the most important things is protecting your time and energy
Yeah.
and protecting yourself. So how do you set boundaries with your team?
Okay. So first of all, I want to reframe what boundaries are, because a lot of us think that boundaries are for the person, right? The other person. And so, for example, let's say, Jessica, you talked to me in a way that really made me feel bad. And, the boundary I'm going to put is, please don't ever talk to me like that again. I'm not going to allow you to, right? That's a boundary. And I have no control if you're going to do it again or not. Right. And for you, just you can say, okay, that's fine. But then something happens and then we get into a tiff and you cross the boundary. Right. And I get upset. The boundary is more for you as an individual. It is
Mhm.
about, the boundary is, how are you going to respond when someone crosses the boundary that you set for yourself? Right. So it's like, if Jessica says something to me and she crosses that boundary, I'm just going to be like, okay, that's fine. I'm going to just walk away right now because internally my boundary was crossed. Right. And so when you set boundaries with your team, is identifying how far are you willing to let go before you feel like I am overwhelmed, I'm about to snap, and I'm going to become someone that I'm not, right? And so it's being identifying that peak moment for yourself. Like, what will it take? Is it I need more, I don't take calls before a certain time, or I don't read emails after a certain time, right? Because I'm preserving my energy. Or is it, during meetings, like if someone is, being disrespectful, right? Like, how are you going to react to someone that is being disrespectful to not only you, but to other people?
Yeah, I also am of that thought that like boundaries are to protect you and they are for you and you have no control. They're not a way to
Yeah, you don't.
manipulate because I feel like that's the misconception that like, this boundary is to control somebody else
Yeah.
to what they can and cannot do, but it's more like how am I protecting myself and really doing what's best for me.
Yeah,
I
you
want to
can't
touch
control
on
other
yeah,
people.
definitely not. I want to touch on something that I know you talk about a lot in like your
Mhm.
coaching and your content, and is about like self-trust. So for
Mhm.
somebody who's like new to this role, to this position, like how would you advise them to start building that self-trust while they're, now they're leading people, but they're also learning in the process? Like what would you recommend for them?
So in order to build self-trust, right, you have to be consistent with what you do. And at least for me in my journey is you have to allow yourself to just make a decision. Decisions aren't, right or wrong. It's just a decision. You just make it neutral. The key here is that you have to be okay with the outcome, regardless of what it is. And once you start doing that frequently and consistently, you start to build trust with yourself that you can decide and you can make, decisions that are going to move you forward. And that's the key thing here, because I think that when it comes to self trust, we feel like we have to make the perfect decision when in reality, it's not. It's just making the decision that you think it's right. Right. And so as you're doing that, you're not only practicing like self awareness, you're also using your intuition, you're also using your logic, and understanding that, okay, if you fail, that's fine. And that's actually pretty perfect. I'm going to say that if you make a decision and it's a total flop, right? And it's giving you an opportunity to reassess, okay, how can I do this differently? And when you do it differently and you get better results, you start to build self-trust with yourself and saying, "Hey, I've been there. I can do this," right? And you're going to be placed in a lot of situations that you've never been in before that you're going to have to make a decision and you're going to have to make self-trust, right, that you're going to make the right decision on how to move forward. So I just encourage you to just fail as much as you can, even if you're in a director position, as long as it doesn't cause unsafe situations for somebody else. But try to take risk. Take as much risk as you can, and you're going to learn from it, and you're going to start to build that self trust.
And I'm curious, like, I'm sure this is something you see a lot with your clients, but like, how have you helped your clients with building that self trust as leaders?
Yeah. So I usually first I start off with asking them like, okay, what feedback have you gotten from other people, right? And so we start to gather all of the evidence of decisions and things that they've done, and we lay it all on the table, right? And so it starts to bring awareness that they're already doing the work. They're already doing the self-trust work. Because what it really is, to be honest, is am I making the right decision? That's what self trust is. Am I making the right decision? And a lot of us want to be perfect. Perfectionism comes into play. And so when we lay it all on the table and we zoom out, we start to see, wow, I'm already doing this. I'm already, I can trust myself to do this. And so that's where we start. Then we start building upon your leadership identity, right? Because if you don't know who you are, you can't trust the decisions that you're going to make, right? And so you need to have a very established core. Like, who are you? What are your values? What do you stand for? What is your vision? And once you have all of that, then you can begin to make decisions out of self trust and trusting that, okay, we're going in the right direction. This is who I am, and this is how where we stand.
And now I really want a moment for people to witness, and don't want to put you on the spot, but
Okay.
I just love people to like witness your coaching. So I would love like a little moment of coaching with Elvy.
Okay.
Elvy, I'm a consultant. I manage projects. I manage like key areas in my organization and I want to manage people. Like how can I prepare myself practically and emotionally for that?
Okay. Tell me what has been going on? What has led you to, want to take on this role? What do you feel like is holding you back from achieving it?
What made me want to like manage people is because I mean I've been in consulting for or in the healthcare space for 10 years and been a lot of managing projects and managing the people within my projects but not as direct reports. So I want to take that shift. And I think a lot of it also has to do with like now having my coaching business and just loving the developing a person. So I would love to also develop the people that I would be managing. So it would be still doing similar work that I'm doing now, but now I would be having direct reports that I would be, supporting them with their growth and in the projects that they do. So, like for the holding me back, I don't think anything specifically has been holding me back besides me being like, oh, there's certain grades and that you have to climb through first to get to that position. But I mean, I've already talked to my manager and went to her. I was like, hey, I'm in this grade. I know there's another grade between that one and, what I thought I needed to be eligible to be a people manager. So I was like, these are the things that I'm doing. This is like the support that I need from you, or like the doors I need you to open, or the opportunities that I need. So I'm working towards that. But
Yeah.
I guess it's like for someone who didn't like approach it that way, didn't approach it as like, I know the things that I need to do and I need your support as like my manager. Like, how would you have navigated that conversation or that situation?
So I'm going to coach you real quick because I'm
Okay.
seeing two
Yes.
things. So
Yes.
I want you to take a deep breath, shake it out. Okay. And I want you to keep your eyes closed. And I'm going to ask you this question. And when I finish asking this question, I want you to open your eyes and just give me the answer that comes without overthinking it. Okay. Take a three deep breaths. Two more. Who are you pretending to be? And open your eyes and answer that without overthinking it.
Wow, that's a loaded question. Okay, so who am I pretending to be at work or just in life?
Just whatever comes up.
I think like part of me is I don't know if the word pretending, but I want to use my coaching skill sets in my career. And I think it's because I really like that aspect of it. And I am very confident in my current role. And I feel like that is taking it to the next level. That is being able to apply my coaching identity into that. I'm like, so I don't know if the pretending is maybe I feel like I need to validate my coaching identity into my career.
Yeah. That could be. I think you answer that question to yourself. I think that you are thinking that you're not that coach, right? That you're not that leader that is going to take you to the next level. And you totally are. But you are holding yourself back. You're pretending to be someone else that you're not. And so the real work is we need to work on why is it that you're pretending? Who is it that you're protecting? What part of you are you protecting? Because it seems like you don't want to get hurt. It seems like something has happened in your career journey and you're afraid it's going to happen again. And so once we get out of, we move those barriers and those challenges and we're able to get those things out of the way, then we can see clearly on how we can move forward. It really starts there.
Thank you so much for that coaching.
You're welcome.
So I did want to go with rapid fire questions and it could just be
Okay.
like quick answers. So what is one boundary every leader should set?
Ooh, the boundary that time and energy
Red flag you now spot immediately in like your leadership opportunity.
when they don't know what the organization mission vision is and when they don't know what your role does.
Best piece of leadership advice you ever received.
What kind of quality of life do you want outside of work?
Ooh, this is all what this, podcast is about, right? Thriving in career and your life. Thank you. What is your morning routine that helps you show up as a leader?
Coffee. Coffee and a good podcast.
Yes, I know I love listening to it like on the drive. One book or resource that really helped you in your leadership journey.
Ooh, okay. The book called The Alchemist. It's such a good
Yes.
book. It's such a good book because it's for me it was very spiritual, and I know you probably think like, what does that have to do with leadership? But leadership is very humanistic. Like it's very human like, and it's a
Yes.
journey. And so that book, I totally recommend it to anybody and anyone that is looking for their purpose or need clarity. Grab the book and read it.
Thank you. Okay, so one last question. Complete the sentence. You don't have to blink to be a great leader.
You don't have to prove yourself to be a great leader.
Loving seeing a pattern. Okay, so you know what? Closing today's episode, what's one thing you want listeners to take away from this conversation today that's going to help them be both ambitious and have a full life as a leader?
Yeah. So if there's one thing I want you to take away, I may not know you, but I know this is that you were placed on this earth for a bigger reason and you have a bigger calling. And in order for you to reach your bigger calling, you really need to have a tough conversation with yourself and look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself these three questions: who you are, and then, who do you need to be and who are you pretending to be? Because once you get through those three layers of questions, you're going to know how to move forward. Do not let society, do not let cultural expectations, do not let the systems that you work in tell you otherwise, that you don't belong, because you do. And the biggest thing here is that we as women of color, we need to have a seat at the table. We need to start changing the narrative. And we already are, but we need to continue, because by us being there, we're going to show the future generations that are coming behind us that they can do it too.
I love that. And tell us how others can find you. How can they work with you?
Yeah, so I'm a life and leadership coach for women of color, and I help women land promotions, lead teams, and build a leadership identity in a career that really shows who they are, not just what they do. And you can find me on Instagram with Coaching with Elvy. I'm sure Jessica's going to put my link
Yes.
on the show notes. I also have a newsletter that you can sign up for. It's the leadership that you were never taught. And those are the two main spaces that you're going to find me in. I also have private one-on-one coaching if you're interested in that. The link is also in my Instagram bio and also in my newsletter. And I would love, if anything resonated with you today, I would love to coach you, to be in your corner, cheering you on so you can reach your career goals.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for coaching me. I got
Of
coached.
course.
And I will get back to you to continue the coaching. And so thank you so much.
Of
And
course.
thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise with everyone. I hope you got exactly what you needed from this episode, and that at least one thing clicked. One shift, one conversation, one thing you could actually try this week. And if you're listening and thinking, okay, but how do I apply this to my job, my boss, my situation? That's where I come in. I work one-on-one with ambitious women of color who want to grow in their career, get promoted, negotiate more money, or make the next move without burning themselves out or losing their peace. We get clear on the strategy, work through what's really getting in the way, and build a success that actually fits your life. If this episode resonated and you want support, you can find me at jessicalynn-wellness.com or DM me on Instagram at jessicalynn-wellness. We'll chat about how I can help you thrive in your career and in your whole life. And if you know another ambitious woman of color who needs the conversation, share this episode with her. If you loved this episode or the podcast, leaving a quick rating or review helps more women find this space, and I appreciate it more than you know. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. You don't have to choose between the career and the life. You get to have both, and we're building that together. I'll see you next week. Vámonos.